So my name is Jill Abel. I know a lot of you in the room, and it's fantastic to see such a wonderful turnout. We've been up in Launceston and Burnie over the last couple of days, and it's been so nice to see the enthusiasm from the tourism operators. Not just tourism operators, but we've had travel agents, we've had a whole range of people participate in our workshops. And I think we've all recognised how tough it's been for the last couple of years, and it's so nice to see people with a smile on their face and some optimism and enthusiasm for where we're heading in the future. So from the Australian Cruise Association perspective, we are, I guess, the land-based destination and operational side of the whole cruise tourism picture. So my members are the state and regional tourism associations, all the major ports around the country, a number of the key attractions, transport operators, service providers and the likes. And so we're very grateful for the support of our Tasmanian members, many of whom are in the room with us today. I live here in Hobart, so I've had the absolute privilege of running a national organisation from Hobart, in normal years, travelling quite a bit, but my role is really a bit of a conduit between the operators and the destinations and the cruise lines. And I think Joel's point about destination management, I've just been at Seatrade, which is the biggest global event in Miami. It was my 17th year of travelling to Seatrade, and I think the biggest shift for me over the time has been this genuine commitment to the sustainability piece that Joel has just spoken about, and also this destination management piece. It's key to the way forward, and I look forward to working with destinations in making that work with the cruise lines as well. Joel, we've been doing these presentations for a little while, and I think Joel stole some of my slides, I'm sure, or my conversation, so I'm not going to repeat things because there's nothing worse than hearing things twice. But part of this workshop program started off in November last year. We had some confidence that through the Cruise Restart Federal Committee that December 17th may have been the golden day of lifting the ban. And we started the community consultation and workshops in Queensland, up in Cairns. And I was, putting my last dollar on the fact that 17 December was going to happen, and then that nasty little pest of Omicron came along and put a little bit of a halt to that. 17th of April came along and we were all very excited to see that ban being lifted, and on the 18th of April our first P&O ship came back into Sydney, and the sun shone in Sydney, and I think there was a little message. It had been raining in Sydney, I think, for 3 months continuously, and on that day the sun was out and the harbour looked beautiful, and it was wonderful to see all the people lined around the harbour celebrating the return of that ship. Now, we all know that there's been controversy and there's been commentary in the media around cruise shipping, but I think one of the positives, if we can pull out of the pause, is the realisation of businesses and communities about how much impact and positive impact cruise had on their businesses in destinations. We often talk about cruises' ability to take people to regional destinations. It's one of the real drivers. A lot of people come to Australia and don't get to an Eden or a Port Lincoln or a Burnie. And cruise is really providing that opportunity. And it may only be for one day, but it gives them that little bit of a taste. And they're often returning either on another cruise or on a land-based holiday. So that's one of the key messages. But we've had destinations like Sydney that cruise has been around in Australia for a very long time, longer than me doing this, which is now 27 years. But cruise is not new to Australia. But businesses in Sydney just became, I don't think it's immune's the right word, but they're just used to it being there, and they didn't have to do an awful lot to grow the business. It kept going. But during the downturn, the accommodation sector that kind of just went along with the growth of the cruise business. The businesses down at Circular Quay hadn't really had a huge focus on talking about it. And then when it went away, it was really clear how much they missed it. So it's starting, as Joel spoke, there's a gradual restart because we're in winter and it would be slow at this time anyway. But the future for this coming season looks really, really bright. Most of our destinations will be seeing similar levels to cruise visitation that we had pre-pandemic. And we also are in a position where, with 17 million people having been cruising somewhere else in the world, the protocols have been tested like you can't believe. The work that the cruise lines have done with the scientists and the health experts and the governments has been absolutely tried and tested and is proving very positive and successful. And so we're actually coming in. I'm kind of feeling a little bit selfishly proud of the fact that they've done a lot of the hard work, and our restart into cruise is going to be a much easier one and more positive. As communities, we're understanding COVID and other viruses to the like. We're understanding how we need to behave, and the settings that are in place for cruise, as Joel discussed, way exceed many of our other land-based activities that we're all used to now. So part of our workshops has been bringing cruise line influencers and decision makers and the actual operational people around the country to talk with you. So I'm not going to speak for too much longer because I know that we've got some great questions that will come from the floor, and we're going to do a panel session with Mike Mihalov from Carnival Australia, and he can talk a little bit about the brands that they represent. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the trends that we're seeing post-COVID in shore excursions. Jay Mackenzie's here from Bob Wood Cruise Group. She's the conduit between the cruise lines and you. And we've got Christy Little also from Tasports. And, they're a key player, and the ports all around Australia, and actually facilitating that access and making sure that it's smooth and the interaction between the ship and the shore runs beautifully. So I'm going to ask those three to come up to the front table. We're going to do I'll start with a bit of a Q&A session that'll hopefully get you all going and feeling comfortable about asking some questions from the room, because I think the key element in these workshops is hearing from you, getting your questions. Hopefully we'll be able to answer them today. If we can't, we can come back to you, and actually making you feel a little bit more familiar with the contacts and the players in this space. So if they'd like to come up, it's easy. So Mike, I always start with you, and that is because we would like to hear from you about the number of cruise companies and brands that you actually represent, and the work that you're doing in terms of this restart, and some of your ideas about opportunities.
All right, thank you, Jill, and I'm very grateful to be here, and I think I saw a few of you last night after a few whiskies, so that was a nice touch. I'm representing Carnival Group, so in the global context, we're about 50% of global capacity. There are 9 brands. The big ones that you would hear of a lot are P&O Cruises, Carnival Cruise Lines, Princess Cruises. Then there's also Holland America Line, Seabourn. You'd all know the Cunards, the Queens. We've got P&O World Cruises, which is the UK version of P&O Cruises. Then we've got Costa and AIDA. So it's a very big portfolio. In this context, in the Asia Pacific, we're about 80% roughly, give or take, in any given year of capacity. So we're definitely the big player. P&O Cruises is the only Australian operated brand and year-round brand. Carnival Cruise Line also have a year-round presence as well. So in terms of restart, it's been a bit of a challenge, I think, to put it mildly. 2 years that I'd very happily forget. In terms of business, it's been good in other ways. It's family time and all that kind of thing. But restarting cruise was really tough. And we did start in 2020 in Europe, just with some intra-country cruising in Italy and in Germany. And then last year we started in the Americas and going to Alaska, the Alaska season. They actually turned around a 120-year cabotage policy. It's known as the Jones Act. If you've ever heard of that, or if you've ever done a cruise from Alaska, you actually have to go to a foreign port. So that cabotage is in place to protect American shipping. They waived that for the season to kickstart the business back. So that was remarkable. But having said that, this was still pre-vaccine. vaccination levels were low as that was starting to really come online. There was obviously some resistance to vaccination. So you had a very, very tricky ecosystem. We had to navigate through all kinds of complicated jurisdictions. In some areas, the condition was that we could only come if people could travel independently. In other cases, it was you could only come if your guests are in a bubble. And a bubble, I'll use the example of the Tokyo Olympics. This was the world's largest bubble. And the Japanese do things very, very well. They couldn't keep COVID out of the bubble. So just to give you some kind of context as to how the restart has been going. The great news for us is, as Jill mentioned, all that hard work's done. And we are now operating in Australia again, in New South Wales and Queensland at the moment with big ships. We have protocols in place, but they're not onerous. They're basically in line with the local policy. So masking, for example, on confined vehicles is definitely still in place. There is no capacity restriction, which is great news. We were worried about that at the beginning. And generally, we are not having any kind of major issues. We are running the ships at approximately 85% capacity at the moment, which is our choice, so that we have vacant cabins available for quarantine if it's required. There's all kinds of relaxation in regards to close contacts. Most of those close contact policies remain in place on ships because you are, of course, in a fairly closed environment. So it is a little stricter than what you would expect shoreside. But having said that, once you go ashore, we are bound by the policy of the jurisdiction. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of an insight. It, to me, is great because I feel like our industry is waking up again and it's coming back to life. We mentioned it briefly yesterday, but that geopolitical world outside is creating opportunities for us down here. So there are additional ships being redeployed to our market, which is great news, and aspiration from the international audience is high for Australia and for Tasmania.
So picking up on that international aspiration, we know through Tourism Australia's research and the likes that international market might not come back to pre-pandemic levels until about 24-25. From a cruise perspective, we know that cruise passengers are avid cruisers. They're loyal to their cruise brands, and they are in some ways more effective of turning those aspirations into actual travel. Overseas travel, international visitors into the country, we've got some of our traditional ships coming back, like the Cunards, the NCLs and the likes, that traditionally would have that higher percentage of international travellers, up to 80-85% international. What are you seeing through your brands in terms of that uptake of international coming back into Australia?
Yeah, huge. So Holland America Line, Seabourn Line, Cunard, they're all brands that really focus heavily on international sourcing. Our local brands like Pinot Cruises, Carnival Cruise Lines, and to a degree Princess, they do a mixture of domestic sourcing and international. We're seeing anywhere up to 85% of international sourcing on some of those voyages. And those newly released voyages, which are going to come online soon, will be focusing almost entirely on fly cruise from the traditional markets, Western markets primarily.
So I think that's exciting news for destinations like Tasmania. Jay, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions about cruises restarted in Queensland, and I know you're very actively getting the teams together up there. When we went through this pandemic, there was lots of conversation about the non-cruiser that was never going to go cruising. And the stats that are coming out at the moment and through consumer sentiments is actually showing that the person that didn't think they were going to go cruising is actually deciding to go cruising. And I think you've got a little bit of experience about what you're seeing with the new to cruise and the activities that they're doing on shore and the uptake in that area.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been amazed, to be honest. I thought that the restart was basically going to be cruisers, people who had credits, and we were going to get return cruises for a good few years, or 12 months at least. The recent cruises up Airlie Beach and through Cairns, a lot of them have been new to cruise, and it's been really exciting talking to them as they come off the ship to find out what they've done in the past. And when they're coming ashore, they're doing a lot of shore excursions that traditionally we didn't get huge uptake on. And that's been a really exciting thing for a lot of our new operators into the program. So we're seeing things like our jet skiing being well and truly overbooked. We're seeing our scenic flights going out, and small experiential tours are the things that are having the major uptake. Yes, we've got the big highlights tours that are still in demand, but there's just so many other tours that have been taken up that traditionally weren't necessarily so in the past.
So that's exciting. Another message that came out of Sea Trade was that the destination is again key to the decision making around itinerary planning, and that a lot of the cruise lines for future itineraries are really going to focus on staying longer in destinations, and that's being driven by the consumer saying that that's what they would like. And I think it's also going to get driven a little bit by the cost of fuel going forward, that cruise lines will actually be making preferences to stay in destinations longer. So some of the discussions that I've been having with cruise lines is that instead of leaving at a 6 o'clock sailing traditional time, they'll either stay on for a late sailing at 10, 11 o'clock at night, and in lots of cases seeing at least one night overnight in port, and in some cases a second night. What does that opportunity open up for tourism operations that you're working with?
Oh, it's a huge opportunity for anybody, particularly if you've got some sort of evening product. We haven't really had a lot of evening product because in the past we didn't have a lot of overnight stays. So we're really searching for some really immersive products. I know we've got a fantastic evening product at Bonnarong, and it sells fantastically to the international and to the domestic market. So we're looking for some more opportunities that people can do that they can't do themselves on their own. So it's got to be something that's unique, not something that somebody can go and buy off the shelf. We just want something that's a little bit different to that. And if you've got any queries or any ideas about products, you can always bring them to us or any of the ground handlers, and we'll help you maybe massage it into a product that we'll sell on board, and maybe be able to give you an idea of what markets it may suit or what ships it may suit. And together we can work out some really good product, because I mean, I love it down here, and I think Tassie's got so much to offer, particularly down here in Hobart. So I'd love to talk to people who have just got even, you may think it's a harebrained idea, just bring it to us, and then we can tell you, well, it is, but if you tone it down a wee bit, or if you turn left instead of turning right, we could have some product that's absolutely fantastic. So yeah, please bring any idea. Any idea is a good idea.
So everyone knows how passionate I am about Tasmanian Product, and of course we stopped in at Callington Mill yesterday afternoon in Oatlands, and we can't stop talking about it. It was just so wonderful, but I think that opportunity for those longer stays and overnights means that slightly longer travel outside outside of Hobart and into the regions, or actually combining the actual Hobart and the regions in one day and an overnight becomes a real opportunity. And our local product, I think, did you buy a barrel yesterday?
I'm working on it.
So I think there's some great opportunities in exposing the cruise lines in the future to our product that can get on board and be exposed in that way, and expanding that economic benefit. Christy, Tasport's such an important role in facilitating cruise access around the state. Would you like to just give a little update, and then we'll open the floor to questions?
Yeah, thanks, Jill. And certainly from our end at Tasports, we very much welcomed the announcement from government that cruise ships would be permitted back into the state. It's been a long 2 years, and one where we've really missed having the ships in, so it's a very important segment to us. So we're very much looking forward to later this year and having the ships back in. To help give a bit of understanding around the bookings and the process for communicating that from here, we obviously have the announcement from government about 2 weeks ago that we were given the green light, and we were certainly hoping and expecting that to come, but until that formal announcement came through, we needed that to happen just to give certainty to the lines that they were going to be able to come back in. So we've had bookings in the system. We've called them placeholder bookings throughout the pandemic, because the booking cycles for the lines did not stop at any point, and it was just taking them back out when they couldn't eventuate. So We have placeholder bookings in, and they are similar to sort of the figures that we were seeing pre-pandemic. But now what we need to do is we're going through a process to have those reconfirmed with the lines, just to confirm that their intention is still there to call. And we really want to allow that process to play out so that when we do publish the schedule, it's as accurate as possible. I think we understand there may be things that make it need to be fluid, but so that's the process we're currently undertaking. We're allowing a month following the announcement for the lines to do that. So we obviously went out straight away. So around the middle of July, we should be in a position to publish that schedule, hopefully with quite a bit of confidence. But at the same time, look, we appreciate you all needing to plan. So if anyone's wanting to have an idea of what we've got in there, I'm more than happy to share that just for internal planning purposes. And we can chat about the best way to do that through DST or whatever the best avenue is, just to help that. We're certainly not hiding the information, but we just want to make sure it's as accurate as possible.
Brilliant. I think one of the really positive aspects of our sector is that whilst we look at ships and see them as being large or all different sizes, the actual stakeholders involved in the sector are actually quite small. And so we are really focusing from an ACA perspective around that communication piece. We're very understanding of the fact that labour shortages are an issue around all of Australia and, in fact, the whole of the globe. This whole concept of tourism being back, if any of you have travelled either interstate or overseas recently, tourism and travel is back, but it's not really quite back to where we knew it. There's lots of complications, there's delays. And the big focus we've been putting on our conversations is around remaining flexible and being adaptable. And I think for at least the next 12 months, we're going to see changes. Years gone by, cruise lines look to plan 2, 3, 4 years in advance in terms of their itineraries. And Mike's declared that some of those have been a week and 2 weeks in terms of the changes. So we'll be doing the best that we can. And I know that some of your businesses are struggling as well in terms of your numbers, in terms of staffing, etc., and coming back online. So it's really important that we keep the communication piece open. So I would like to open the floor to questions. Great.
Sorry, Alex. You got Melinda from Pennycock Wilderness Journeys.
Sorry, Melinda, would you like to stand up? I think you had to follow Alex's instructions and say who you are. Thank you.
Just wondering, I don't need a microphone. Just wondering, probably Jay, more around you and building on what you're saying, Jill, around Shorex and Christie's, timing around schedules published. So what are you thinking around Shorex when bookings would come out? Because often, you've pre-booked a year in advance and there's all these things in, and obviously there's not a lot in the system at the moment. What are you thinking around your planning around that?
What I'm thinking and what my team's thinking are two different things at the moment. So the way we've worked things is we've been, as a company, concentrating on Queensland, obviously, because that's where cruising started. As we've just been saying, there's been a few schedule changes to it, so we've been furiously doing that because that's been happening in the coming weeks. South Australia was the next one to sort of say we'll welcome cruise ships back. So we're currently putting in all of our bookings and reservations for South Australia. I'm hoping they'll be out into this week, beginning of next week, and then my team's on to Tasmania. So we will have, I'm really hoping, everything out to you mid-July. I know that's not really far away, so as I say, I'll be shot for saying that. But really, we know how important it is that everybody gets all the dates so that they know what's happening. We also understand that you'll all have other business going on. There's still a lot of domestic business, obviously, down here. So there may be some dates that you can't do, some tour times you can't do, and we get that. So if you get the bookings and it doesn't work for you, then please just pick up the phone and have a conversation with myself or anyone in our team, and we'll try and massage it. We'll try and see what we can do. If we can't offer it on a date, so be it. Don't think if you can't do what we're asking, that's it, you're going to be out of the program and you're done. We really understand the situation that everybody's in. We know we're late in coming out with all of this. We know we want as much capacity as possible, but we're realistic about A, staffing levels that everybody's got, and B, that you've got other bookings in place. So we'll get it to you as soon as possible. Also from our side, pre-COVID, we had a team of 26 in our head office. We've now got a team of, as of Monday, we'll have 11 people. So we've also downsized. So I guess coming back from you guys, if you send us something and we don't get back to you straight away, please just be patient. If it's really urgent, again, pick up the phone and just let us know that you need to know and you need to know now. It's just taking us a little bit longer to do a few things as well. But as Jill said, communication. It's the most important thing, I think, in this restart. With if a product's changed, if you can't do something because a component's no longer there or a venue's closed, again, just tell us. Yeah, and we'll work with whatever we can.
Yeah, and I should add that within the ACA, we also have Intercruises and Abercrombie in Kent, which are the two other main operators. Jay was available to come and down and do Tassie and does a good proportion of the activity here. But James Coughlin from Intercruises, Alex has his details, and Anthony Brent within Abercrombie in Kent, and they're all passionate about Tasmania as well. Communication, I think, feedback from Christy that hopefully within the next couple of weeks, those scheduling it'll be up on the website, we're hoping, and that will give everybody an opportunity to really get stuck into their plans.
Could I add something about communication? We also are communicating with the guests and managing expectation. The problem with labour shortages and domestic demand driving uptake in capacity, it's not unique to Australia or Tasmania, so it's happening all around the world. And we don't have the capacity we had pre-pandemic. So we understand that, we're communicating that with guests. They're generally pretty understanding. And if you've flown, you would probably have experienced some delays and some challenges. And I think that's just part of the parcel. We've never shut down like this before. So starting the engine up again takes time, and we're aware of that.
How much are taking the pre-planned tours that they book for event versus those that are FITing on the ground? So in some cases, when you restart, you have people couples where they couldn't go out and do their own thing. When they do have the option, what's the percentage looking at?
Yeah, great question. Traditionally, it's pre-pandemic, we would see about roughly a third of the packs go on pre-planned ship-sold Shorex, roughly a third do their own independent experience, and roughly a third pretty much just do the walk around town and kind of, feel out what's going on today, what am I going to experience, and just kind of ad-lib it. So,
I didn't get that. Oh.
Siri didn't get that. So, thanks, Siri. I better not say that or she'll talk again. So what we're seeing now since the restart, and there's a couple of reasons for this that we're theorising, is that 30% or 35%'s jumped up to 50 to 55%. And largely I think that's to do with the fact that guests feel safe on the ship. They're surrounded by other vaccinated people. They know their status. They know their environment, so they're feeling quite confident. So when they buy a ship's sold excursion, they're feeling like that's an extension of the ship. So that's one. Number two is they've got these little pots of money that they've been hanging on for 2 years, and they're desperate to spend. And we're seeing the expenditure in all revenue areas. So that's the shops, definitely the bars, all of that specialty dining, all of that stuff is going gangbusters, a little bit like your domestic demand right here. So I keep warning the number crunchers, don't expect that to last forever, because it probably won't, but it's definitely happening in the restart phase. And I think we should try as much as possible to plan for that, also taking into consideration the capacity restrictions. So it's just going to be a little bit of feeling our way through this new space.
I think the exciting thing with some of the partnership work we're doing with Tourism Australia, and Christy mentioned some of it, is that in the past we've kind of sat cruise a little bit to the side of overall tourism and kind of gone, that's cruise tourism and it sits here. What we're really excited about is bringing all of those programs together and really talking about those cruise tourists that are loyal to cruising, but they also do things other than cruise, and how, as destinations like Tasmania can tap into an international visitor that flies into Sydney and might be going to cruise in Northern Australia, but is actually going to be in Australia for 3 weeks, and how we actually work with the cruise lines to tapping into knowing who they are and how destinations can actually access getting information and product and exciting experiences out to those cruise passengers. And we're going to be doing a lot of work with Tourism Australia and the cruise lines in that in the future. And I think you'll see cruise fitting in a much more normalised place within the overall tourism picture.
Hi, Cynthia from Yacht Services Tasmania. I have a question for Christy. In terms of the scheduling, how far in advance do you work on that, considering Hobart's not a very big port and you've got all the shipping and cargo ships coming in as well? So how do you deal with the traffic congestion?
Yeah, well, I guess when we say that cruise ships are managed tourism, they are, absolutely. They are very organised. We have bookings coming through generally around 2 years, but sometimes beyond that. So it really helps us because we know when the ships generally, obviously we've been through a period where that's been different, but we know when the cruise ships are coming, and most of those itineraries are locked in and the bookings are really pretty firm 18 months out. You do see some odd changes, like if ships get sold or, leave fleets, etc. But essentially we give cruise ships generally have the priority because they are booking so far out. And then we're lucky with Hobart, we don't have a lot of congestion. Certainly in other ports like Burnie around the state, it is a little bit more of an issue, and we have to manage that and massage it to try and accommodate as many commodity vessels as possible. But in Hobart, we're pretty fortunate. We've got a couple of berths and we do know the cruise ship movements well out. And then, it's just fitting in the other vessels and making sure we're working with customers and other vessel operators that want to come in to make sure, we're communicating when there's windows to get those vessels in. But it's not so much of an issue. Generally it works okay. Does that answer your question, or was there? Yeah? Okay.
I've got one more question. Do I have to say no? I know the schedule's not out, but when you say pre-pandemic, are you roughly expecting a certain number of Burnie, Port Arthur and Hobart, like roughly, sort of around 65, Hobart, 80, 65?
To be perfectly honest, we're sitting at the moment, I think the figure this morning was 66 for Hobart. That's excluding Coral Discoverer. We don't really incorporate that into the figures. So when I look back at pre-COVID, the season 19-20, we had 66 ships. So it's basically exactly back there. But as I say, there's movements, in regions surrounding ours that are less certain than what Australia has now confirmed, which may impact on that. So we can say it's going to be around that level of visitation. And Port Arthur's around 25, I think, 22 to 25 at the moment. 22, we've had a couple come out in the last week, but so it is very similar to what we had before. And in the bookings, it's a range of vessels. We've got small, really luxury boutique vessels, we've got the mid-size, we've got some large ones coming in, so there's a really big assortment there. But we will, I think the date I've said we'll publish is the 18th, so we want to give the lines time to refine it, but we know that we're going to have to call it, and so we've kind of set that date to have something out. But if you do want to see something preliminary, just an idea. Yeah, of course.
Tim Parsons from Coringa Park. Guys, I feel like I should know the answer to this question, and we've all got operational and contractual things in place, and we're ready for it. But it's been a long time since any of us have had 80 or 100 people right up on the doorstep. And so with your policies and procedures and the expectations of the passengers, we think we're ready for you, but what are the expectations of you guys and the passengers, and the biggest changes that you're likely to see from what you've experienced in Queensland on the reopening, as to what's going to happen when they disembark and start shifting around as far as us as operators?
I think what you're asking is what's the uptake like? Is that the question? I think it's good. I mean, pretty much whatever capacity we have sells out. And the folks that can't get onto capacity are quite happy. Look, you're really, really gifted in Hobart. You have an amazing berth right on the city's doorstep. So that's why you get overnights. That's why you get a lot of calls here. It's a no-brainer. People will have a great time in Hobart no matter what they do. And I can say that with confidence. It's often in our top 3 Australian ports. So in regards to our expectation is we just want to be able to offer as much as we can and deliver as great a quality experience as possible, but also keeping in mind the reality. You know, there's other business that's happening. There's other bookings that have taken place. And I think, we just have to work together through this period and get through it. By next year, it'll get better. The year after will be better again. So I'm pretty confident that we'll deliver.
Can I, yeah,
Product delivery, the expectations of passengers.
around vaccination status and...
You guys to say, we're going to do this, and this. But in reality, when they turn up, what are the changes that we're likely to experience as far as queues, wait times, the whole distancing thing, meal deliveries, and how we roll that out in reality?
So, as Mike said earlier, everything here is based on local jurisdiction. So whatever you do normally is all that we're expecting, nothing different. I think when it comes to capacity, and this is probably a conversation with everybody individually, but the expectation from the client is still the same, from the guest is still the same as it always has been, but they do understand that there are restrictions going all around. I mean, it's in the news everywhere that the whole tourism industry and hospitality industry is having issues because of staffing levels, etc. So there's a little bit of an understanding there, but I guess from our side of it, yes, we've got an agreement that there's going to be 120, whatever it is, coming through. But if you don't believe that that's something that you can cater for initially, or you want to make sure that you do this slowly and gradually to make sure we keep the expectation the experience where we believe it should be, then that's just something that you have to have a conversation with us. So instead of having the 96 rocking through all at once, if you think you'd rather bring it down to 80, then just let us know. It's something that we just need to work through for the first couple of months. And then we can come and say, well, look, we've got this wait list. These people want to come. Is there any way that we can do something about it? And if you turn around and say no, then that's a done deal. But if there's something else that we can do to give everybody the experience. So it's really a conversation. It's just, you just need to keep talking to us and saying we only want to do this much capacity because of our standards. And then we'll run with that and we'll just keep talking if we get more requests for it. Does that sort of answer your question?
It's the old saying, under promise, over deliver.
Yeah.
So if in doubt, give us less.
Yeah.
Christy, hi. I'm just wondering if Tasports has given any thought to any changes to the cruise terminal operations, walking permits, road closures around that area, what sort of facilities you might continue to have in the cruise terminal. Will it be business as usual as it was pre-COVID, or are there any changes afoot?
Yeah, look, based on the current health advice and where we're heading in that direction, it is looking like we're going to be able to return pretty much to a similar arrangements that we had before. That is with, with some retail in there, the meet and greet services. We're working with DST and the Hobart City Council on the best way to service the passengers, and we're looking at things like arrangements for independent tour operators. We certainly recognise that we need to have a means for them to access the passengers in a managed and organised way. There's certainly discussions with the council and DST underway at the moment, and we'll communicate them when we bed it all down. In terms of the waterfront, our expectation is it'll need to be managed in a similar way. We've got traffic engineers coming through and just helping us look at that area at the moment. The road closures are something that I don't think we can get away from just with the interactions between thousands of passengers that are unfamiliar with our environment and the parking and the number of vehicle movements we have through there. I've highlighted over the years that's an ongoing safety issue for us, and we want to make sure that the passengers, are safe when they're walking through there. So I think in terms of that, we're looking at it, but I'd expect it to be similar to what we were doing prior to COVID. Yeah.
one last question, if that's okay.
So, my name's Adi from the Tasmanian Travel and Information Centre, City of Hobart. And Tassie, we sort of pride ourselves on, nature-based tourism and I think sustainability and responsible tourism, as Joe was mentioning. There's all talk of, cruise ships using bunker fuel when in port. So how is that being addressed? And is Tasmania actually, are we doing something to make sure we're going to keep our environment as pristine as possible with the large impact that cruise ships have?
Joe?
Yeah. So I think people are probably... Sorry, I might give you grab any of the mics, they're all live. It's probably worth, I suppose, reminding everybody, if anybody knew about it from before COVID, and I think a lot of that sort of messaging got lost in the last 2 years. But around, and I've also forgotten which date. I think it was around the end of 2018 or in 2009, end of 2018. Australia and the rest of the world essentially introduced what's called MARPOL 6, which is the International Maritime Oil Pollution something, which basically requires all maritime vessels to use low sulfur fuel. So as of that date, all ships switched to low sulfur fuel, or the use of what's called exhaust gas cleaning systems. So when you see, what you see coming out of the funnels on a ship that's using exhaust gas cleaning systems is actually steam. So what they're doing is they're cleaning the exhaust, and it's a very technological system, but it either produces a residue which has to be disposed of safely in a certified and approved way, so somebody comes to the ship to collect it, or it is cleaned, and they have what they call closed loop systems and open loop systems. So the liquid, the water that's used to clean the exhaust gases are then processed. If you're interested in finding out more about it, happy to share the information. As you can tell, I'm not a technical person, but rest assured that in Australia is a signatory to MARPOL, and in fact, the cruise industry made a commitment that it will comply with the MARPOL regulations everywhere in the world, regardless of whether the country. So New Zealand, for example, hasn't signed up to MARPOL yet. I think they're just about to, but the cruise industry has been complying with the rules since 2019, because that was our commitment that we would do that. The next stage is really, as I mentioned, shore power. Sydney has just committed to shore power. I think most of the ships, certainly I think the P&O ships that come to Australia all are equipped for shore power, so they're not burning any kind of fuel when they report, but unfortunately our ports don't have the ability to offer shore power. So that's something where the industry will work with government to try and get those ports upgraded over time. Currently, Sydney is the only port that's committed to shore power, and even that's going to be a longer-term project, because obviously you want to make sure that the power that you're using is green, from a green source, because there's no point just moving the problem somewhere else.
Which is perfect in Tasmania.
Which is perfect in Tasmania, exactly.
Right. Thank you so much. We've run a little bit out of time, but we do have time afterwards for morning tea, which is served now outside in the room where the tea and coffee was earlier. So please head out there, get some morning tea. I'd like to thank very much Jill Abel, Mike Mahaloff, Jay McKenzie, Christy Little, Kirsty Malapa for coming today and for sharing those insights. And they'll be around to give us some or have chats with you during the time. So thanks again, and go and get some morning tea.